Swearing in of the city manager, J. Andrew Small.
I state your name.
I, J. Andrew Small,
Do solemnly swear.
do solemnly swear
Support the Constitution of the United States
to support the Constitution of the United
and the
States
state of Ohio,
and the state of Ohio,
and the charter, ordinances, and resolutions
and the charter, ordinances, and resolutions
of the city of Napoleon, Ohio,
of the city of Napoleon, Ohio,
and the laws of the state of Ohio,
and the laws of the state of Ohio,
and faithfully and impartially discharge and perform.
and I will faithfully
Impartially
and impartially discharge and perform
all duties incumbent upon me
all duties incumbent upon me
as the city manager of the city of Napoleon, Ohio,
as the city manager of the city of Napoleon, Ohio,
to which I've been appointed
to which I have been appointed
for the term of office that commences
for the term of office that commences
January the 9th, 2023,
January 9th, 2023,
according to the best of my ability and understanding.
according to the best of my ability and understanding. Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it.
You didn't hear you. That's right. Want that?
No.
Still not working. All right, well, welcome, Andy. All right, will everyone please rise for the Lord's Prayer and Pledge of Allegiance. Our Father,
Who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
okay, item E on the agenda is the State of the City Address by Mayor Jason Mazel.
Don't worry, Councilman Barrett, it's not gonna be an hour long, hour and a half. Good evening, thank you for allowing me to fulfill my obligation in presenting the state of the city. When I was in high school, I was on the track team, and after pounding on hurdles during my sophomore season, Mr. Downey saw it fit that I should be part of the 2-mile relay team, or a 4x8 if you will. We qualified for regionals as a junior, and then had the privilege of running 2 laps around the horseshoe as we qualified for state during my senior campaign. I like the relay's team aspect. Each individual trying to have a personal best so the team can enjoy a team best. The leadoff guy, usually me, would speed around the track twice and hand the baton off to the next teammate. Since this event is often the first scored event during track meets, there were times when the backstretch was not as clear as it should be with random hurdles or that young athlete trying to find a place to warm up. After successfully passing the baton, of course being extra careful not to drop it, my teammate would then gather themselves for their leg, find their pace, hug the inside of lane 1, and make their way around the track. Their goal for their 800 meters was trying to gain ground on any teams in front of us, or most often, not letting teams pass us until it's time to once again observe the chaos that is the relay exchange zone. Kind of like we're doing here tonight. We're taking the baton from 2022, gathering ourselves for the race ahead, trying not to drop the baton, hugging the inside lane, finding our pace, and hoping all the hurdles are off the track. So as we take the baton, let's see where 2022 placed us as we head for the first curve. The leadership baton was passed from Joel Major to Andy Small. Andy, if my experience has taught me anything, is that relationships matter. We trust you will preserve and expand upon relationships that have served the community so well. We are with you. We help you when we can. We look forward to your service. Thank you for being with us and taking the responsibility you've been given. After Joel left, the city had some big shoes to fill. And to their credit, the department heads responded by steering clear of hurdles and keeping pace. Many of our departments excelled in 2022. Let's look and see what they have done in their previous leg of the relay. And since we're talking about the exchange from Joel to Andy, I would be remiss if I did not mention Chad's service as the interim city manager and his fine job of avoiding hurdles. Jennifer Arps, our CAC director, said, and I quote, "The fact that you couldn't even tell this was a transition period speaks volumes," unquote. Chad also has a history of finding grants available to the city, and 2022 was no exception, as he secured $1.3 million for use. That is saving taxpayers and the ratepayers as we continue to work on our critical infrastructure. To put that number, 1.3 million, in perspective, that is 10 times the average, the annual average amount received by Chad's predecessors. Of course, we completed the multi-use path, as well as created the new GIS position to allow for annual savings by eliminating large external contracts. I think you all agree that's a nice leg of the race by Chad. The city lost another leader when former Fire Chief Clayton O'Brien decided to leave us for Oregon, Ohio. That leaves us with a key position on our relay team that we need to fill. I'm confident the process agreed to by the Civil Service Commission, in accordance with the Ohio Fire Chiefs Association, will lead us to our next fire chief. 2022 saw the Napoleon Fire Department finish a strategic plan as well as a feasibility study. The Grain Rescue Training Center opened this year as well. Living in Northwest Ohio, where the tallest structures are agriculture related, this training area should help first responders to be better trained for what could lie ahead. We thank all our partners for helping us put this together. I think we all agree that the training there should be hard, so if the day ever comes when training is needed, that day will be an easier one. Well-trained first responders, like relay teams, have a better chance at winning. And the Napoleon Fire Department kept pace with over 1,800 calls last year. This number continues to climb. I think we need to remind ourselves that the reciprocity tax passed is one of the reasons we continue to offer such responsive service. The Human Resource Department had a baton handoff in the middle of the year as Laney Lambert left to be replaced by Brittany Roof. Starting on the 25th of July, Brittany made an immediate impact by being a key member of the 3 negotiated contracts and helped hire Andy Small by shepherding the Personnel Committee through that process. She has helped hire 21 employees. I think we all agree that she's been an absolute breath of fresh air. We thank her for being so diligent. We're excited for what 2023 has in store. Good track coaches watch what their teams do and use those experiences to help with their training program. And Brittany is no different. She brought her ideas and was worked at other locations to the city. This includes her multiple ride-alongs with the Napoleon Police Department. As far as I know, she is the first HR director to take ride-alongs with all 3 NPD shifts. Speaking of the Napoleon Police Department, they too kept pace during a busy 2022. Led by Chief Mack, they work on the Safety Service Facility Feasibility Study, as well as their strategic plan. They added, along with some of our help from our RT department, car-mounted dashboard cameras. They also made the department more responsive by adding priority-based dispatch. And this change coincided with the change in radios and communication equipment and dispatch. I'm looking forward to learning about Marks very soon. I don't want to speak for Chief Mack, but I think he would welcome council members to spend 15 minutes at dispatch to see this technology in action. The Operations Department will have a baton handoff in 2023 as Jeff Rathke retires. In his last full year as Operations Superintendent, he'll coordinate concrete grinding, and for the first time ever, we had 3 brush grindings in 1 year. Operations saw full use of the salt shed with additional purchase of over 700 tons of salt. The spring and fall cleanup saw almost 500 tons of waste removed from the city. Our operations team, like tough track teams, work in awful weather. And this past Christmas, as temperatures hovered above 0 degrees, our operations team was out fixing water main breaks. If you want to know the type of team Jeff is leaving, I think working on Christmas in horrendous conditions speaks volume. Thank you, Jeff, for your leadership. We trust as you pass the baton, you do so with the knowledge of a job well done. Another key team here in the city is the Finance Department. This year, they earned the Auditor of State Award with distinction for the annual audit. This is a testament to the detailed work they do each and every day. Finance Department also helped usher the city's tax operation to the Regional Income Tax Authority, or RITA for short. They also worked on customer service, spreading other ways for people to pay their utility bill, to include Google Pay, Apple Pay, and this new thing called PayPal, as well as Venmo. Kevin and his team also helped us have one of the smoothest budgetary processes I've ever experienced. That is a remarkably well-run leg. And Kevin, I challenge you and your team to be even better in 2023. Let's switch to the law department. Billy and Tammy do such a wonderful job every day. I think we all recall in late 2021 we closed the Knights Inn property. The first step was the closure. The second step, with just as many pitfalls, was the subsequent selling of the property to another entity. Putting a for sale sign up and taking the first legitimate bid would have been easy, but Bill did not take that route. Billy avoided the hurdles and found a willing buyer who we believe is going to revert the old ways of doing business on Scott Street. The law department continues to be instrumental in ensuring the city receives our fair share of opioid settlement funds. Of course, Billy also defends the city in court on a weekly basis, handling criminal and traffic cases in municipal court. Electric department had a solid 2022 and continued with their recent history of being an economic force multiplier. The electric department answered the call by providing Danacore with outstanding service, as well as helping the main stops requirements. They helped existing customers as well by upgrading the service at 2 local businesses. They added poles along State Route 109 and Westmoreland Avenue, and added 20 new residential meters. That seems like a pretty good lap. One of the goals of the track athlete is to have a personal record every time out. I'm excited to see how the electric department can infuse themselves with some rookies and maintain their amazing pace. Before I move too far away from this topic, I want to pause right here and talk about what 20 new homes means. 20 new residential homes, 20 new families coming to live, work, and hopefully enjoy everything Napoleon has to offer. And I repeat this every chance I get. When I came into this position, we had negative housing growth. And last year we had 20. It's awesome development. And not convinced that we're growing, I'm proud to relay. Get it? Relay? The report from Kevin Schulteis, Exhibit 1. Dollar amounts for commercial and residential permits both increased from 2021 levels. This is an example of taking the baton from the previous year and improving position before handing it off. When some of you are trying to set your PRs, some steps show immediate improvement. Others take shape over a longer time frame. We look at our water plant and its continued evolution. We see that Jeff and his team earned their renewal of their NPDES discharge permit, as well as becoming lab certified in microbiology. They also upgraded their SCADE system. Those will be small changes, maybe not really seen by residents, but they're setting records every day. What our residents will notice is the lagoons are being filled in accordance with the NPDES permit. When that happens, we should be proud of this one-seat eyesore is gone. I'm not sure how many of our residents know the amount of work being done to revitalize their wastewater treatment plant. Actually, I'm not sure how many residents know where that team is located. However, in 2022, they continued with their upgrade plan, modified the Palmer Ditch lift station, started the vein hiding lift station project. And there are not too many department heads that I'm going to recognize tonight, but I'm going to make an exception for Kent Bacon. Mr. Bacon won the Kathleen M. Cook Award for Laboratory Analyst of the Year. His 42 years of service speak to his outstanding dedication to his craft and his willingness to work for us. 42 years of service. As the plant reconstruction continues, I think it would be a wonderful compliment to name the lab after Mr. Kent Bacon. The Parks and Rec Department had an awesome 2022. They worked on replacing a section of boat launch as well as redesigning some of the drainage in that area to hopefully prevent that issue from ever happening again. The Napoleon Golf Club celebrated 100 years of municipal service. To that I say congratulations, and I guess 100 years could be a goal for Kent. This is also a wonderful time with a good celebration filled with music and hospitality. The golf course also had their best revenue year ever. This is a testament to the team at the golf course. I think that helped that we had wonderful weather without any large flood events. I also submit that during COVID, the course was rediscovered, and hopefully play will continue to grow. As we look for ways to make Napoleon more attractive, one of the best ways is realizing the all-stars that Tony has in his team and how hard they work every day to make recreation time even more enjoyable. Our IT department, mentioned already when we discussed the addition of police vehicle cameras, helped by adding other cameras at other locations as well. These include new technologies at court. They also help the finance department by migrating software to a new server. Here's another example of running hard for a year, working every day to keep us rolling as smooth as possible. Nice leg, IT department. So now we have the baton. And as we have heard, we're in very good shape as we take off out of the exchange zone. Now in a relay race, the goal is when you have the baton is to gain ground, to leave the team in a better position than when you receive the baton. So what can we look forward to in 2023? I think one of the things we need to look at is road improvements. We're paving roads, but losing ground due to wear and tear. It's a time to look at a robust mill and fill program. We also need to be very, very diligent when the roundabout is under construction. If history is any indication, all the signage we place for alternate routes will be useful for many, but I'm confident that some hard-working truck drivers will use their GPS, blow right through the sign so they come face-to-face with final barricades. Where will they turn around? What do we need to have ready when an 18-wheeler becomes a big impairment to Scott Street by trying to turn around on Wood Drive? We also need to keep in mind the long-term nature of our city and maintaining and improving those long-held relationships. One of the ongoing issues facing Napoleon is water, in particular trying to expand our water customer base. When Liberty Center leaves, it could cause our rates to increase. One of the ways to combat this is to add more customers like we did with Florida. Very soon, I think the Water Committee Chair, Andy and myself, should reach out to Florida just to reassure them we're still on the same sheet of music as we were before. Another hurdle for us is continued housing growth. 20 is a great place to start and very different where we have been. What else can we do to encourage housing growth? Speaking of housing, I think one of the issues we have, I think this is a national issue, is that some of our housing stock is being used by Airbnbs. While I applaud the entrepreneurship of these owners, do not wish to stifle it, we owe it to the taxpayers to make sure the city is receiving the correct amount of revenue from these type of businesses. And since we're on the topic of new businesses, I think we're all happy with the recent addition of Dunkin', Big B, and Main Stop to our Scott Street corridor and other areas as well that have seen renewed investment. We also hopefully have a business move into the spec building before the end of 2023. While we welcome out to our organization, hopefully that someone close to home is ready to grow into a larger space. I'm sure the history will repeat itself, and we'll be given a chance to show our hospitality when we were asked to help. We need to be ready for this hopeful development. And finally, I'll leave you with this. As you know, the characters in this room change. It's a weird feeling to look around on this side of the gate and realize that of the elected officials, I think I've served the longest. As time slips by, there's a tendency to start counting the days until your time is complete. High school students call this senioritis. As I was pondering this, I remembered a few things. The first is what we told when we were landing in Korea, and the other starting a new tradition. As many of you know, my last duty assignment in the Army was in Korea. Now, Korea is not a highly sought after assignment for a few reasons, one of which is an unaccompanied tour. Meaning if you're married or have dependents, the Army is not paying for them to join you unless you're staying beyond the typical one-year assignment. So when you land at Incheon International Airport, board a bus in a very Army way, eventually find your way to the welcome brief. During the welcome speech, the very kind public affairs officer tells you what to expect while in Korea. I remember at the bottom of the welcome presentation was the line, "Welcome to Korea, make the days count, don't count the days." Hopefully everyone will know when they're on their last lap of their relay. When that happens, I challenge you, like I'm challenging Councilman Bear and Councilor Napoli, to make sure we make the days count and not count the days. The taxpayers are pay us to do our utmost until our time of service is complete. With that in mind, I'll be starting a new tradition. The old tradition seems to be outgoing elected officials will not attend the annual budget meetings with the thought, well, this isn't my budget, so why should I attend? I'm not in that camp. My new tradition will be attending that meeting, helping the new elected officials, and doing whatever I can to make sure we finish 2023 strong and make the make the next exchange just as smooth as possible for the baton to move to next year. Thank you very much.
Great job, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item F, approval of minutes from the council meeting on January 3rd, 2023. In the absence of any corrections or objections, the minutes shall stand approved. They stand approved. Okay, item G, citizen communication. If there's anyone in the audience that would like to address council on anything that is not on the agenda, you can step up to the microphone there. And if are we on WebEx? It's not working. Okay, I'll skip that part. All right. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item H. Reports from council committees. H1, the electric committee did not meet on January 9th, 2023 due to lack of agenda items, canceled by the chair. H2, the water and sewer committee did not meet on January 9th, 2023 due to lack of agenda items. H3, the finance and budget committee held a special meeting on January 9th, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. and recommended the council to approve the 2022 fourth quarter budget adjustments. And H4, the Municipal Property Committee met on January 9th, 2023 at 7 p.m. And Molly?
Thank Thank you. We're going to recommend the council hallway upgrade tonight to council.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item J. Introductions of new ordinances and resolutions. Item J1 is ordinance number 001-23, an ordinance allowing ODOT to work inside city limits for the Route 108 roundabout project and declaring an emergency. Have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Welcome, Andy.
Well, thank you. Glad to be here. This first ordinance is, as you can see, it's in a little bit different format. That happens to be ODOT's preferred format for the legislation. This legislation basically grants consent to ODOT working within the city limits. We pay 100% of any additional features that are not part of the project. It gives state permission to acquire right-of-ways, and it also, upon completion of the project, basically states that we own the project.
Do we have any dates yet that we anticipate this starting?
Not yet.
Okay.
All I know is it's supposed to advertise for bids this spring. That's the best schedule I have so far.
Okay. Thanks, Chad. Any questions or comments? Okay. Marissa, please call the roll.
Joe,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Dr. Dave,
Yes.
Molly,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
Ross.
Yes.
Okay, that will move on to second read. Item J2 is ordinance number 002-23, an ordinance supplementing the annual appropriation measure supplement number 4 for the year 2022 and declaring an emergency.
Motion.
Second.
I will defer to Kevin on this.
Okay, Kevin?
Thank you, Council President. These are the final budget adjustments for 2022, and this allows us to, once these are passed, to officially close out that year. Some of these, these are is if we overspent what we budgeted at the time. And in some cases, it's a good thing because there are a few of them here on here that are transfers. For example, the 170 fund, which is our income tax fund, we budgeted low, but when we transfer it out to the general fund or the capital fund or the rec fund, we've actually collected more. So some of these are really a good thing. Some of the things are things that we didn't anticipate, or we just, even if it's over a penny, it has to be on here. I would ask that you pass this and suspend the 3 reads so that we can close out 2022 this week.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone have any questions or comments?
Make a motion for suspension. Second.
Okay, Marissa, please call the roll on suspension.
Joe,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Dr. Dave,
Yes.
Molly,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
Ross.
Yes.
All right, then please call the roll on the ordinance.
Joe,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Dr. Dave,
Yes.
Molly,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
Ross.
Yes.
That passed on first read under suspension. Item J3, ordinance number 003-23, an ordinance authorizing the finance director to make appropriation transfers, transfer of appropriation 4 from one appropriation line item to another appropriation line item pursuant to ORC section 5705.40 for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2022, as listed in Exhibit A, and declaring an emergency.
A motion?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Kevin again?
Sure.
Yeah, thank you, Council President. This is actually the very last thing, if it is passed, which I hope that it would be, that we could close out 2022. The difference between this legislation as opposed to the last one, and this is actually the preferred method if we can, this does not increase our overall budget. This allows us to take something that was budgeted in one line item and reduce it and then increase it in another line item. So you got a positive and a negative that would equal out with that. And again, I asked for suspension of 3 reads so that we could close out the year.
Thank you.
Motion for suspension. Second.
Okay, Marissa, please call the roll on suspension.
Joe?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
Dr. Dave?
Yes.
Molly?
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments regarding this item? Okay. Marissa, please call the roll on the ordinance.
Joe?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
Dr. Dave?
Yes.
Molly?
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes.
On the behalf of the Finance Department, we thank you. This allows us to close out.
You're welcome, thank you. Okay, that is passed on first read under suspension. Item J4 is resolution number 004-23, a resolution approving the execution of a schedule with American Municipal Power Incorporated for participation in the Community Energy Savings Smart Thermostat Program and declaring an emergency.
A motion?
Second.
Andy?
Kevin's on a roll tonight, so I'm gonna defer to him.
All right.
3 out of 4 ain't bad.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager.
Sure.
He's delegating very well as a manager, I like
Yes.
that.
Let's remember that on 084-22 when that comes up next.
Okay.
But, Council President, all kidding aside, this resolution is to execute the schedule for the AMP for the Smart Thermostat Program. If you remember last year in the fall, late fall, Erin Miller was here from AMP, and she did a presentation about those thermostats. So the project is going to continue on. The one thing that they changed from the project to when they did do the presentation is that at the time, they asked that we committed to, I believe it was 200 thermostats, 150 to 200 thermostats.
Right.
That minimum was taken away. So because we get charged like $8 per thermostat that gets on this program, we still will get charged with that, but we don't get charged if we don't reach a minimum. So if we only have 20, we would get charged only for 20 with that. As a whole, because they have to have so many, as a whole, that there was other cities and villages that just couldn't commit to that because that was the change. But the project will continue on. And this is the first step to be a part of the project.
And that requirement, was there a certain date, wasn't it like by January something, or?
Yeah, there was a date that was like at the end of this year, or beginning of next year, that you need to have those by. But again, those minimums are no longer in place.
Okay.
So they're still hopeful that the overall is like 2,000 to obtain to make the project feasible. But again, they just could not, there was just hesitancy by other entities out there because of the minimum that they waived it. So I would encourage this to pass, at least first read, and then that we can join the program.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone have any questions or comments regarding this program?
That was one of my biggest concerns about this program, was the minimum that was established. But with that being gone, maybe it deserves a better look.
I think that they were able to entice others to join to get that full 2,000.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure if we were gonna reach a minimum of 150 to 200.
Yeah,
And,
so
so with it being gone, that makes it a better
You-
better
you-
to look at it.
you sort of become a little less risk on that matter
Right.
because they were going to charge you for the minimum whether you had it or not, and it was like $8 per thermostat. So we'll get charged for them, but if we get 50, we get 50.
Yeah,
And
get
so-
charged for 50, right?
Yeah. But it will have to, the city and the, Napoleon Power and also the Napoleon Utilities Departments will have to do some advertising and promote it out and see if people will be interested in it with them, in the program. But again, our first step is to pass this.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
With the minimum being removed, I think it offers an opportunity. If people do want to take advantage, they can. It's not going to cost us any extra. I think it would be just another option for people to have a choice.
Right. And Bill, you looked this over for quite a while, didn't you?
I did, well, so it took some finagling to actually get the agreement over to us. This legislation was requested five months ago.
Mhm.
And I think Joel was still here at the time. So I leaned on Joel a little bit to try to get this brought over. I think AMP is a little busy maybe, so. But they did get me the agreement and the legislation requested. And, yeah, I've reviewed it and it's legal.
Great,
I
thank you.
do have one question. If somebody does sign up for it and later they decide to quit, are they allowed to leave? Or are they going to pay a penalty? Will the city pay a penalty if we have somebody leave?
Well, there's no charge for them at all.
join.
To join.
But
There's no-
if they decide to leave, would they be able to leave?
Not that I'm aware of that there would be a penalty for them to leave. I'm not exactly sure the steps for them to leave. But, for example, if a house transfers ownership, the thermostat would most likely stay. But, so there should be an out on that, but there shouldn't, I have not heard of anything for them to
Not leave
drop.
that way, I mean leave, they decide they don't want to be part of the program. Can they get out of the program without a penalty?
To my knowledge, no, but I can look into that for you
Okay.
with that. The risk that you would do is there's a commitment from AMP to have this project. So their commitment is like, for example, 3 years. If they don't reach the minimums, and this is not self-sufficient, this project could be itself eliminated. And that's part of taking away that minimum with that, to see if they can gain that. So I would think on both ends that it could be ended, if possible, with that. But I will double check on that for you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, Marissa, please call the roll.
Joe,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Dr. Dave,
Yes.
Molly,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
Ross.
Yes.
All right. That will be moving on to second read. All right. Item K on the agenda is second readings of ordinances and resolutions. Item K1 is ordinance number 084-22, an ordinance authorizing a pay increase for the City of Napoleon, Ohio Finance Director and declaring an emergency. Motion?
So moved. Second.
Anybody have any questions or more comments regarding this? Hearing none, Marissa, please call the roll.
Joe,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Dr. Dave,
Yes.
Molly,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
Ross.
Yes.
All right, that will move on to third read. Item K2, ordinance number 085-22, an ordinance authorizing a pay increase for the City of Napoleon, Ohio Law Director and declaring an emergency. Have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
All right, and same thing here. Are there any questions or comments regarding this? Okay, hearing none, Marissa, please call the roll.
Joe,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Dr. Dave,
Yes.
Molly,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
Ross.
Yes.
All right, that will move on to third reads. Item L is third readings of ordinances and resolutions. We have none tonight, so we'll move on to item M, good of the city. M1, discussion or action on the Marks Radio history. Do we have our historian, Chief Mack, here? Welcome,
Thank you, Council
Chief.
President, how are you?
Pretty good, how you doing?
Not too bad. I've been asked, as you know, last council meeting, I wasn't here, I was on vacation, but to kind of give a little bit of an update to the Marks. One of the challenges to that is making sure we've covered what we've been covering for 6 years, so everybody's on the same page while not dragging it out. So I will keep it as brief as I possibly can and try and answer the questions I need to do. One of the biggest things I think that on the success of anyone's mission, whether that be in the private industry, work running a company, or in law enforcement, safety services, military oriented, is your communication plan. And if your communication plan fails or has trouble, so goes the mission. And so that sole reason is why this has been such a big attention grabber for Chief Clayton and myself and the county fire, along with Sheriff Bodenbender. So as we go through this, go ahead. Yeah, just kind of scroll. So this first one, just kind of coverage. This is just a real quick cap as we go through it. Prior to 2017, I got promoted in 17. Prior to 2017, Chief Weitzel and law enforcement alike across the country were forced into something called narrow banding. They took our old VHF radios. It was a federal mandate. Basically shrunk the bands down, which started causing coverage issues, and that's what kind of led us where we're at today. So we went through that narrow banding. At the end of that narrow banding, everyone was seeing changes in our coverage, and so the county started looking at new examples or new ways to communicate. So that's kind of what those slides have. I wanted to make sure you all had new handouts. There were a slide or two that changed over the weekend, just kind of an update. I'll try and point that out. So that's the 2017 version of that. The county officials began looking, I want to say right around 2016, for a new radio system that could better our chances on success when the time comes for our missions to be very, very critical. And that's what led them to the Lucas County system at the point. Nationwide, and specifically here in Ohio, the move, the new tomorrow type of thing, just like with data technology, it's ever changing, the radios are that. And so digital radios are the future, they're the way we have to go, so to speak. And that's what this system is. It's a 700 megahertz, it was close to there's essentially a couple systems in Ohio. Marks, as we've heard in the radio or in the news, that's a statewide system. Lucas County, long time before 16, developed a system that mimics Marks, but it primarily served Lucas County. We were included. It's my understanding we were included into that due to a regional partnership when we first got our radios in 2010-ish, is what I want to say. Our Marks radios. Go ahead, City Manager. All right, so first and foremost, one of the misconceptions, and I think the biggest misconception, in my opinion, is over the course of the last 12 months is that the thought process was when we really started taking a serious look at this, is that there was we made a mistake in 2017. We didn't do the right thing in 2017. There's a couple maps I'm going to show you. I think the pictures are worth 1,000 words, as the saying goes. I truly believe in that. There was no other system that was better than the one we went on in 2017. I do feel 2017, I know I said it during budget, was the right decision for the county. We went from one channel to a whole host of channels, 400 some channels, definitely got interoperability that we didn't have before with the state. With other entities around, with Lucas County. Those are things we didn't have, so were we better prepared after we went to Lucas County? Absolutely. We were more readily available to have a successful mission should that need, especially with our adjacent cities and jurisdictions. However, what this diagram will show, or this map, this is I think they call it a propagation study. It's a best guess by engineers of what we would anticipate coverage would be. So this is before coverage was actually happened. I want to say this map was 2016-ish, early 2017. I added a couple arrows to it just to kind of draw out your attention to it. Obviously yellow, I shouldn't say obviously, sorry, I don't mean that. Obvious to me. Yellow is a good thing, that's the coverage, all right? That's the anticipated best coverage if you can. This is the 281 site that we're currently, for the most part, the county's on right now. The orange areas, that's coverage, not as good as coverage. Spotty coverage, you're not sure what you're gonna get, okay? We're all faced with financial decisions, what you can afford now and what you build to afford later. That was definitely something I'm sure was part of the process back then when we were when the EMA was working on this. As we move into the next page, this is the same kind of study. The county owns a tower out at the hospital. All right, they have other radio services on that county tower. So just like we did 4 years later, we looked at that tower saying, how can we try to utilize that and what kind of service would we get? These maps I obtained later because I wasn't a part of the initial conversations, but this shows what that reception potentially could look like with a tower at the hospital. Now, I point out a few things. There's some redness. That's definitely a negative thing for the county. And even down lower, I don't know if you can blow it up, but in the deep left corner, if you can probably see it on your printouts, the deep left and right corners of that map, you'll actually see no coverage whatsoever. Deschler was one of those areas in southeast of the county, was one of the areas that was definitely lacking coverage under the old VHF system. So these were, when I got brought onto this late 2017, all this information was definitely part of my decision on why we should go that route. And I wanted to make sure we showed that to show that the individuals making the decisions at the time, this is the information we had. Now that situation has changed. That dynamic has changed over the last 5-ish years. So as we move into the next information, all this slides for, and I'm not going to read it. You guys have it. You approved it. It's budgets. But I wanted to kind of capture some of the costs. One of the, we tried, was affecting Napoleon Fire. This was affecting Ridgeville Fire. This was affecting Napoleon Police Department. This was affecting sheriff operations in this area with the reception issues. We tried handling that. When I was brought on in late 2017, I was told we might have some coverage issues. We might have to put repeaters in. We're not sure. We'd have to see what the actual coverage is versus what we were told to expect. And I think that's true of a lot of scenarios that we do. You anticipate something being this, but until it's live, you're not real sure. So once it was live, we started experiencing some things right away. So that's some of the dollar amounts that we kind of threw at it. The moral of the story is Napoleon has spent a significant amount of resources financially to try and fix this problem, to try and help fix this problem. None of that money, what I want everyone to hear is none of that money was ill-spent. Every dollar spent on on this slide is being utilized going forward as well. Those same repeaters are just reprogrammed. Actually, the repeaters aren't even reprogrammed. They're on the same channel. But the radios, everything that we spent, the $190,000 we spent in just upgrading our dispatch center, it's true. That gets us about a 20-year lifespan on our dispatch, and all that is a reprogramming. It's nothing more than what your laptop goes through occasionally when you reprogram it. So that money was very well spent. And as we move into the next slide, what I felt was important here out of this slide was I needed to make sure, I felt like I needed to make sure everybody fully understood, and not just in this room, but elsewhere, Napoleon area schools. Napoleon area schools failed before I was a chief, failed during their remodel, their VHF radio test. Okay, so they were in no worse condition when we went digital than they were when we were not digital. None of the radio systems passed in their buildings during that time frame. For whatever reasons, they decided not to install what they call bidirectional antenna. That's a fire code type of thing. That's not a bad thing, probably financial if I had to guess, because it's very expensive. But what I want everyone to understand is the Chief O'Brien and I worked for several years with the new administration at the school as we were working on all the other problems surrounding that campus and rebuilding relationships between the city and the schools. This was on our topics. This was things that we were working on behind the scenes. And we were not necessarily pushing the city school system on making that BDA happen. Because during this time frame, we weren't live on the new Lucas County system yet. That was 2017. We went live right around 19. And the last thing we want to do is the schools use our tax dollars to program radios and do everything on a system that we knew was going to be outdated in a year. So we worked with them. Once we were live, there was still things that we had to work through as we ironed out all the little details there. So, you know, as far as the school system, they've worked very well with us, and I wanted to make sure I reiterated that. In the end, once the new administration figured out what was going on and we had enough conversation, they did their own studies inside the building. They just installed this summer and had it live in the first week or so of school, a BDA system, a bidirectional antenna. That's pretty important. I'm not a radio guy, and I never was, and there's still a lot of things I don't understand. But what I do understand, a BDA has to have a signal on the street. Essentially, it's a relay that brings whatever signal on the street into your building so our portables can reach it. So instead of our portables trying to reach outside and into our cars, they go through an internal antenna system and then kick out, okay? The thing to note there is, as they were going through that, there were officials at the school, and including my SRO, who were told, even if we stayed on Lucas County, there wasn't enough signal on the street to bring into this Napoleon Elementary School. So their BDA would not have been effective if we remained on Lucas County. That's a situation that I'm sure the assistant fire chief can talk about. You know, if it's ever, because we did some other testing on a factory on the south side, some warehousing on the south side, that you got to have a signal in the street to make sure that anything inside the building works. So that's really what that was about. We did install portable mobile repeaters. Why is that important? For the most part, I'll say 90% of what we do, we're there for a short period of time, so to speak. I go to Walmart, whether that's shop and get whatever I'm going to eat that night at dinner, or whether I'm there on a call for service, I've got my radio, I'm not there for 8 hours, I'm there for X amount of time. I can flip on my mobile repeater and kind of have a good relay. So for most businesses in town where we had dead spots and have dead spots, that's not such a big deal. The school system, that was a big deal because I can't leave a cruiser run out there for 8 hours. So, you know, the school did what they needed to do to make sure our schools were safe as fast as they could once we got everything solid. You know, in the grand scheme of things, we went live, I want to say 2019-ish, so we're only in that first 2.5 to 3 years. Go ahead, Andy. This picture just kind of sums up really quick what we've been trying to do by year. So I've already talked about it. February 2020, I think it's a very important note there. About a year after we were live, Napoleon understood that we were having some issues. We didn't have mobile repeaters yet, but Assistant Chief Fry, under the direction of Chief O'Brien, there was some grant funding out there that they started researching. Can we try and get a tower in Napoleon area with some federal or state grant funding through, I believe it was the Homeland Security, to see if we can try and better that system. I reached out, Chief Fry reached out to me on it. I reached out to EMA and was told that that specific grant wasn't appropriate, which is fine. They all have their, their RFQs on it. But we tried, behind the scenes, we were trying to address this issue about a year after it started and trying to coordinate that with the county officials. 2022, bringing you up to where we're at now. January through December, the sheriff, myself, fire department, multiple fire departments. I put some attendees there down to bottom. There's a lot of communication that's been happening. Not all public meetings, some of them are operational meetings that we have, but the communication was, we need to do something because the repeaters aren't working. They are a Band-Aid. They're working. They're not working when you don't have a signal to bring in. They don't work. I think we've talked about in open council once. There was a scenario just recently, the last couple months, where there was a fire on the south side. Napoleon had radio conversations going back and forth. They were on one of their repeaters. Their portables, right out in the open, weren't working. They had to go to a truck repeater. Ridgeville Fire came over. Theirs didn't work, and they didn't have a repeater programmed, so they had no communication whatsoever. They could yell and scream at the firefighters and get more communication than the radio that's $7,000 sitting on our hip. That, to me, is a huge red flag. The sheriff and I had a similar situation with an armed, barricaded individual out on Scott Street. My guys, with the use of the repeaters that have been authorized by the city, were able to communicate on that scene, but we had to go to repeater. The sheriff's office could not because they didn't have our repeaters. So those are just two highlights just in the last 5 months that the sheriff and I said, we've got to do something. Safety is our number one priority, and this is what we've got to do to figure out what that is. So as we go into that next slide, one of the things, the sole purpose of this slide, the one on the left, excuse me. Yeah, the one on the left is, I kind of rudimentarily outlined Henry County. That's the coverage we had. So one of the first meetings we had was with PNR, our local Toledo area. The individuals who do our programming have been helping us with our radio programs for years. We met with them and met with Motorola representatives and said, can you give us maps on what we actually have in coverage so we can see what we're dealing with? The map on the left is January, February of this last year, 2022, January of 2022. That's the actual coverage that we're seeing right now done by Motorola. Again, you see why Ridgeville's having issues. You see why Napoleon's having issues. You see why the corners are having issues. The map on the right you've already seen. That was before we were live. So what I'm getting at here is the studies are pretty accurate, okay? As we go into the next slide, further, that's a blow up of the last slide that we're live on. So when Clayton and I are talking, or Chief O'Brien and I were talking about radio issues, when Ridgeville's talking about radio issues, the data from Motorola's backing that up. We're definitely having issues. So that's kind of just a blow up. We kind of sit in the valley, as we all know, and that doesn't help on radios. Go ahead, sir. This next one. I put this slide in here for a couple reasons. So in the top there, you see a couple arrows going a couple different directions. Notice that there's not a lot of white there. They've got a pretty good, what I'll call blanket. I don't know if that's the official term, but I'll call it blanket coverage. But all those little dots on that map, those are towers in the Lucas County system. Okay? So this is one of the slides that changed this weekend. I was actually talking to my wife, and she goes, well, how many square miles? And I'm like, I don't know, good question. So I Googled it, and according to Google, Lucas County has 596 miles, only 341 of those are on land. If you look at Henry County at the bottom of that, we have 420 square miles, and all of it being, well, most of it being land. Less than 1% is water. So that is the entire Lucas County, this map, the radio system as it sits right now. Thus why we were looking at, right out of the gates, a year into this, why we were trying to research what we could do to help finance a tower, or to figure out how a tower could be financed, is to build the existing system out. And that was one of the other misconceptions, I believe, as this thing unfolded over the last 12 months. Our initial emails, our initial contact, our initial conversations were about building the Lucas County system out and how do we make what we have better, okay? In doing so, we learned a few things, which leads me to slide 12. Slide 12, again, I like the arrows. I do that for a reason. Slide 12 is to show you that we have the ASR site, the current site on 281, there in the middle of the county, and we looked at adding a tower there at the top left. It's called Taylor University. That's nothing more, that was about as unscientific as we can go on finding a tower. A map was brought up of towers in the area. We looked for a tall tower up in that area that could spread. We were being told that Archibald was also having some radio issues because if you look at the other previous slides, they're on that, that west side of their coverage. So we wanted to look at what could we do to maybe share a cost with a neighboring jurisdiction and have dual benefits. So we threw a dart at the map, so to speak, because this was all just preliminary, not a design plan, not this is what we're going to put into play. But we were just trying to find a tower that existed, that we could put equipment on it and say, what would that coverage potentially give us? So, there were no deals on this tower or anything. We were just trying to get a for instance. That for instance covered covered the corner up in Ridgeville. But as you'll see in the middle of those two coverage areas, that didn't help Napoleon. So, those that were having these conversations, the sheriff, myself, Clayton, and others, that was our biggest thing, is we were not looking for a solution for Napoleon. We were looking for a solution for the county, because in the end, it's the county that has to succeed. And so that's why that didn't work. So we asked them, can you continue and show us what a tower would look like at the Henry County Tower site? You already did one 4 or 5 years ago, which brings, I think that's the next one. Yes, so there you see the ASR site in Malina live. You see an anticipated coverage of the one up near Ridgeville, and anticipated coverage at Henry County Communications. And that's about as close as we can get. So we would have to add 2 towers. Now, I'm not going to get into the finances, but we're talking $1 million some or higher for these towers. But it's still, I circled a couple things because that still didn't cover the county. Deschler is still a concern down in that area. So we wanted something that was a solution. Adding 2 towers wasn't what we signed on for, and clearly is not financially or fiscally responsible, because it's not something I don't believe that our council can afford, nor could the county at the time, type of thing. So we had to look at other solutions. At that point, the radio, Motorola and our associates at P&R said, why don't you look at the MARC system? The MARC system has been built out over the last 5 years. At the time we went to Lucas County, I don't want to be quoted, but I think it's 1 tower. I think they had 1 tower in the county. Okay. I think it was 1 tower in the county, type of thing. Defiance County was not on MARCs at the time. They were still on VHF. Williams County was on a radio system called UHF. That's essentially how I described it to myself, AM, FM, but still, analog. Lucas County was on the system that we went to. Wood County has about 3 different radio systems going on in that county. So it's kind of a mix-up. So we go to the next slide. I reached out to Marks one morning and said, I called an individual by the name of Dick Miller. Dick Miller is the individual for the state of Ohio on the Marks. His job is to make sure we have coverage. And I started asking for some maps. Everybody's kept telling me, including the sheriff, who says, I was on this system already. I had no problems on it before. This is the system to go to. I'm a visual guy, so I wanted more maps. So I requested these maps, and this is what I received. This map shows you Williams County portable in-street coverage. Portable in-street coverage is important because if we have in-street coverage for portables, that's the weakest signal strength, essentially, because cars are put out a bigger input or output than portable. So if we have this kind of coverage in portables, that means someone on a street can communicate, and that means a BDA can pull that signal and then relay it inside a structure if they have a BDA. So this is Williams County alone. Notice I kind of outlined Henry County. I do that because I wanted to show you that there's quite a bit of overlap there. So as we go through the next couple slides, the next one's going to be, I believe, Defiance County. This is another one that's, this is one of the slides that I changed because I saw where I didn't have the right language on it. But this is Defiance County. Defiance County, because they've went Marks, Williams County has went Marks over the last several years. Defiance County's went Marks. They've added towers in the area. Those towers are given this kind of portable coverage in the street. Go forward, please. This is the map I was provided for Henry County. Existing. With no towers. Now,
There's no arrows, chief.
no, there is not. No, there is not. Now, that doesn't mean we don't need a tower. That'll hold that thought, but that's in portable in street, okay? That means signals are much, much better, no matter how you look at it, according to the people that get paid to put maps together scientifically. Go forward, I believe, sir. Okay. On your handouts, I got Defiance County. There's one that didn't show for that. I'm sorry. Does everybody have that? Is that map shaded out? Okay. What that is, I didn't realize that on the printout. This is the same blow up that I showed you earlier of Napoleon.
Hit your finger.
Technology. And old age. This is Napoleon. I don't know if you can, if you want to hand that up.
Chief, on all those TV shows, they just swipe it, it goes
Yeah,
to all
I
the
know.
screens.
Well, they have a
Why-
really cool glass table too. that they can do that.
do that.
It was in my budget, but Chad cut it. So. But that's a blow up of the marks, that previous map of Napoleon. You'll see that it's got some white in there. If you're familiar with the area, those are river or channels. I don't know what you want to call them, creeks. Oakwood Park, the creek behind, I think it's Oberhouse Creek or whatever. It goes by 424, and then the one behind the schools. The Marks individual, Dick Miller, says we probably have radio coverage in that area because they do that on the conservative side, because they'd rather you anticipate no coverage and have it than tell you you have it than not have it. But what's key is we still have vehicle repeaters. So that's still, if we get into one of those scenes where we're looking for 3 or 4 wanted individuals from a different state out with a drone, we can flip on a vehicle repeater and it's live. The other key piece of that, because as you got in the FYI on Friday, Sheriff Bonebender and I moved to this system. We didn't feel like we could wait any longer, is what it boiled down to. So last Monday, the sheriff moved. Wednesday, our department moved. And we've had, to my knowledge, no complaints. Not to say we won't have complaints. There's a couple things I'll remind you on the last page. Radio, there is no foolproof radio. All right, if you watch SEAL Team 6, even SEAL Team 6 has trouble in radio sometimes, But that's the moral of the story. We moved, law enforcement services moved last week. For instance, this room right here definitely got more secured by doing so. I don't know if any of you noticed, but I never carried a radio in here during council or anything. It's because it didn't work. It was dead weight. So it was worthless to me. So I never carried it. I left it in my car. I have radio. You've heard it going all night long. I've got signal all throughout this building. It could be improved. If there was a tower in town, it would be improved, because one of the issues with penetration or tower overlaps is you want to get inside these major, you get deep into Campbell's, you get deep into some of these factories and the construction of those buildings, and it starts cutting down because of construction material and distance, the signal. So that's why a tower is still something that we need to at least address down the road. But by doing this, it becomes a state concern, and us having conversations with our state reps, because it's a state radio system that they operate, that towers, those expenses, and everything that goes with that. So if we do run into issues, those complaints start going to the state, and it's up to the state to figure out how to get us better coverage, because we're paying for it, we're doing it. So that's our system in a nutshell. Go ahead, sir. What do we have? This last couple, can you read that letter or not? Okay. So that letter, that letter was done for a couple reasons, because the sheriff was communicating with the Henry County Fire Chiefs Association, and right before Clayton left, they had a meeting, and that letter was penned coming out of that meeting, where they supported the decision to go to, and this was early November, where they supported the decision to go to the Marks radio system. That's important, because what happened in the last 60 days is state fire marshals came out with a grant that helps pay for what I'll call resources, your radios, and your fees for fire departments. And all but two fire departments in the county were successful in getting that grant. The key to that grant is you have to be on the state fire marshals, or you have to be on the state radio system to utilize it. Now, it's important, because when you're talking about savings to the taxpayers in Henry County, if we can get grants, and that grant, correct me if I'm wrong, Chief, is relatively normal? It's a yearly. Something that so far historically has been offered on a yearly basis, where we can offset some of those radio fees costs. So that was penned. That was kind of a big deal to the sheriff and I, because that meant we needed to do something, because now we've got some support in the county, and more than us are seeing these issues. So we went forward, January 2023, and we moved. Go ahead to I think the last slide, sir. This brings me up to my final. I think it's really important, because There's a couple takeaways I want to make sure we understand. No radio system's 100%. We're going to have some issues. We're going to have to work through those issues. We're going to have to identify them, just like when I was a rookie and we had an old big VHF radio that I carried on a portable that was like 7 pounds. I knew I couldn't go into the hospital and have radio coverage, but I knew that going in. Although no radio is 100%, the amount of dead areas have been drastically reduced. So there's less for me to know where I'm going to have a dead area. 2, buildings and companies could still have to put a BDA in, that bi-directional. That's not for us, that's not, no move that the sheriff or I or any fires association, EMS agency makes is going to alleviate that problem. That's for the fire chiefs and their building and all the engineers to figure out. But at least we're trying to get the strongest signal that's possible in today's world to their buildings to improve their clients and their employees' safety. Third one, as I noted in 1, coverage issues still going to be there, but our vehicle repeaters, all the equipment that we purchased in 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 can be used on this system. It's a simple reprogramming to include the tower if the owners, if the people in charge of all that equipment and want it to be. Anything that we've bought can be reprogrammed for the state system. It's the same radio, same infrastructure that we use. What's it mean to us financially? I talked about it at budget. It's $10 a radio. That's been that way for a long time. Could it rise? That's always the fear. That's the fear that is always put in our, what if tomorrow, what if next year, that's different. The only thing that I can say is I don't have the entire makeup of their committee, the Marks Radio Committee, memorized, but I know there's multiple sheriffs on there. And I know the Ohio Associations of Chief of Police has representatives on there. And there's agencies that are far bigger than us that increases in that number could critically affect their financial situation. So although I can't promise there would be no inflation down the road, this has to be something that I've got to figure out how to finance if it gets that tight, because this is just one of those things I have to have. I have to have a radio in the end to be successful in anything that you're asking me or my individuals to do, or the individuals in the back row. We have to be successful. We need communications first and foremost. Select radio models. You're going to hear a little bit of conversations. Part of what some of the county agencies applied for that grant was rotating out what you might hear called in backroom conversations as legacy radio systems. They were bought with funding from like 2010, 2011 when Lucas County and all that this whole thing started. Just like computers, everything has a sunset. I have updated almost all of my radios but 3, and even those 3 I don't necessarily need right now. Other agencies aren't as lucky and have to update some systems, but that's what that grant's for, because at least they're getting help from the state to do that. These are very expensive items. I think a mobile radio alone is like $5,500 to $6,000 a piece. So multiply that by what an agency has, and it gets very costly. So any kind of state funding to help us with that is a huge savings to our taxpayers. That can only happen on a state-run system because of the grant requirements. Costs, I've already talked about. So there's a couple other things on that cost button. Reprogramming, not real expensive to get them reprogrammed. They charge by the hour type of thing. Although I don't have the final bill, we're not talking thousands of dollars either. That was a cost I already had a PO sitting for, because there was another programming that was supposed to happen a year or so ago that has not happened. And that was to give us Lucas County's new radio template. As we're probably familiar with, Lucas County went through a consolidation up there where their whole template changed. The talk groups, what channels, what type of thing, that all changed. And none of the radios in Henry County had been updated to that. So there were talk groups that were in my radio that no longer exist in Lucas County. So interoperability, we actually lost a lot of interoperability because of the consolidation, and we hadn't got to the programming yet countywide. On these radios, there's a nice little red button, orange button, emergency button. If I hit that, dispatches in both counties and city know that that portable belongs to me and I'm in distress. That's something we've never had. There are times that and there will be more times, where officers and EMS providers, firefighters are in distress that we can't talk. And if we can hit that button and someone knows where we're at and that portable belongs to me, we just increased our safety millionfold, in my opinion. So those are done for Napoleon Police and Henry County Sheriff's Office with this last reprogramming. We might have one more programming coming up in a year or so, because there's one thing called a link layer you'll hear us talk about, dual authentication. Some of us have had to deal with it in our offices, on our computers. That's something that's coming to, it didn't matter whether I was on Lucas County or whether I was on Marks. Dual authentication is the next best security feature, and it's being mandated by both systems. So we might have to reprogram it again, but that's nothing more than calling somebody in and having them hit the reprogram button. I don't know if I made it in 7 minutes, Mayor, but I tried to keep going.
So Chief, in the very beginning, you said you're not a radio guy,
No.
but you just explained all of that.
I've been
that you
forced
just
into
did.
a role that I was very much uncomfortable with.
That was,
But it's either learn it or get left behind, so I learned it, or tried to learn it.
Chief, right now, I know you're at Marks, the sheriff's at Marks.
Yes.
Is the fire at Marks? If
So,
there's an emergency right now, how do you two talk to each other?
So we kept, when the sheriff and I moved, the short version is we're still talking. For the fire side of Henry County, it's same old, same old.
Okay.
It's doing business just like they did yesterday.
But you can talk.
We can talk. In the programming, when I did the radio template, if you would, basically where the channels lay out on this thing, there's over 512 channels in that thing. When I laid it all out and the sheriff and I talked about it, we left our existing fire and law enforcement channels in that radio. We moved them to the last. So if I need to talk to them, I just got to switch what zone I'm on.
Right.
And I'm talking on the old system, Lucas County. This radio now has in the sheriff's office and in Napoleon PD, that radio has the capability of talking on both radio systems, and that's the intention. So if I go up to Fulton County, who's still on Lucas County, I have that in my radio now. If I go to Columbus for training and I come up on a crash, I can hail Franklin County on a Marks radio with my portable and have no issues with it. That's something that Sheriff and I want to make sure we continue to do. There is a monitoring piece that we lost by doing that, because you can't scan both Marks and Lucas County at the same time.
Right.
Essentially, it's AM, FM. You can't scan both. So if fire's working on Lucas County, the big piece right now, the stress goes onto the dispatch centers to relay information back to fire, and for any information coming from fire, like I need an officer, has to get relayed back on dispatch to our road guys on the law enforcement side. That's the piece we're trying to make sure. The sheriff did go to the county fire chiefs meeting last Wednesday night and informed all the fire departments of the move, and that's a whole nother plan that's happening. But in the end, this thing is still gonna be happening in the county, and depending on where they're at on their radios, their finances, how quick, some agencies might not get as programmed as quick as others. But in the end, the sheriff and I have to keep all county fire on Lucas County until everybody's ready to roll. There's not enough resources in my back dispatch center, essentially radios, hardcore radios, mobiles that are sitting in my back dispatch, to run both Lucas County and Marks. The sheriff and I could go, because it's a one-to-one switch. To run two different radio systems, I would have to duplicate about 10 or 20 channels back there, which means 10 or 20 radios, and that's not gonna happen. That's not financially responsible for myself so we're really coordinating between the sheriff's office and myself and the County Fire Chiefs Association to make sure that we're doing it as a group, and the entire group's ready to roll before we start switching, because we wanna make sure we have as little confusion as possible with this.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Any other, we good, or?
I have a question.
Sir,
You have this tower that was just put up out by the school.
I don't know what that is. I wanna say that's a phone
Right
tower.
now, there's nothing hooked up on it.
Yeah.
They just put the tower up.
I have not looked at the ownership on that. I truly don't know if that's a phone tower or what. Is it a phone tower? The conversation about towers, essentially that got put on hold, so to speak, because we wanted to get moved Now it's up to individuals above my pay grade and outside this room to try and figure out what that looks like. I mean, obviously, we don't want to waste, when I say we, nobody involved in this process wants to waste taxpayer dollars, and we want to make sure that whatever we do, it is affecting things that were done. The 281 tower, does that stay there and get reprogrammed? Does that move? I don't know. That's not for me to decide or even comment on, but there's other things at play here, and the tower thing will be discussed as we go forward. Again, you know, best case scenario, we don't need a tower. But I don't think that's the case. I think to get true safety for our firefighters, especially when they're in the bellows of a downtown building, you know, when it's on fire and we're trying to prevent it from going to other buildings, that we want to make sure, by making sure we have a tower that saturates that. And to go back to my argument on that, you look up at the Lucas County map that I gave you earlier on in the presentation. There's a lot of towers up there to saturate that area to make sure they got penetration in those buildings, and that's key. It's not just a color code on a map. You need that penetration piece. So I do believe a tower is going to be a hot topic going forward, but we need to make sure that we get everybody onto the state system. Once that's done, then we'll figure out the tower piece. But no matter what, with or without the tower, I hope that others share the sheriff and I's opinion, and others in this room, that the right decision was to move to Marks based off those scientific maps that we were provided. Thank you, Council
Thank you,
President.
Chief.
Thank you, Mayor.
Good job.
All right. Does anybody else have any questions, comments regarding that? All right, we'll move on to item M2, discussion or action, review approval of power supply cost adjustment factor for January 2023, PSCAF 3-month average factor of 0.01918, and JV2 is 0.075146. Kevin, is that gonna be you?
Council President, thank you very much. These are just the monthly acceptance or approval of the current rates that we'll be charging. It is a 3-month average. It is right in line. Actually, looking back, you know, our rates do up and down depending on the weather or depending on the season. It goes up because of more usage in the summer, for example. However, compared to 2020 and to 2021 of January, this is lower than those two numbers. So we would like to have the approval at 0.01918, and that's your residential rate there. But compared, like in 2021, we were at 0.02008, and 2020, we were at 0.02531, 23, 22, 21 of January. So it is trending in a great direction. But I do ask for council to go ahead and make a motion to approve these rates.
All right. We have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Marissa, please call the roll.
Joe?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
Dr. Dave?
Yes.
Molly?
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes.
Okay, that's been approved. Item M3, discussion or action on the council hallway update.
Yeah.
Molly?
I can update on that one. So it was brought to municipal properties last week about doing something in the hallway. Mayor Mazel had some suggestions about possibly adding names of people who served on councils past, but trying to do it in more of like a decorative way. Maybe speaking with some like the local artist or even like schools. Like the art teacher at the school, see if some students want to do that. I've actually had people reach out to me who have like historic downtown pictures that they've taken with neat descriptions, and I said, well, if you bring them to me, I can bring them into council, and maybe
Yeah.
we can lay them out.
Mm-hmm.
So I think people actually kind of want to donate too,
Great.
to the cause, so, what did we have budgeted, wasn't it $1,000?
It's $1,000, yeah,
That's
yeah.
what I was thinking. So we just wanted to bring that forth and see if anybody had some other ideas that they would like to see.
There's something to think about, just getting donations from people and putting
Yeah.
historic stuff out there. But you just walk in here and, you know, the history of the building used to be court. It was court and council chamber, so there's just very, you know, Spartan walls. Can we hang some history up and just kind of celebrate kind of stuff that Napoleon has done? You know, from Canal Days to Campbell Soup to, you kind of name it. Nothing in stone, just nothing, you have 8 opinions up here of what right looks like, and we're all probably got something that's gonna be okay, but just kind of looking at those things, just kind of the idea.
I was thinking Ken could write down all the names that he remembers that have been on council and mayors.
The list would be longer than you could write.
Yeah. Well, including your father, right?
Yeah.
How long was he on?
16 terms.
Yeah. Awesome. Anybody else have any ideas?
I would say definitely awards, like City of Napoleon was Tree City. City of Napoleon, Solar City, those type of things.
Yeah, we need to have those on there, yeah,
That should definitely be included.
yeah.
Did we talk about having some sort of committee to oversee this, or like going forward? Or do you just want to have everybody bring it to you and you're going to take care of it, Molly?
I didn't know if we wanted to, just bring it back to municipal properties.
Yeah, does anybody have anything to say? I think if you do, just let Molly know, and if that's
Yeah.
okay with you,
Mhm.
Council President, or Council
Yes.
Chair, so.
No, that's fine, because like I said, I've had people reach out, so I'd like to bring some of the things that they want to donate in, so we can look at them. I thought we could even hang some pictures around in here too,
Right.
not just the hallway, so.
Yeah.
I think it's neat that the community wants to participate
Mhm.
and join in, so. To put the
Agree.
word out.
So bring your sketches back.
What's that?
Bring your sketches back.
Okay.
So that will stay in municipal properties? Is that the plan?
Well, I think we'll just add it when you have a little bit more
Yes,
information or
yeah,
when
that's
it's
fine, and then I'll
needed.
just bring it back
Yeah.
in, and then I can always bring some things into council, like lay it on the back table of what people.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to item M4, discussion or action to accept a donation of $115.63 from the United Way for the purpose of safety city expenses.
These were just donations from some local residents that earmarked them for Safety City, to the United Way.
Great, could I have a motion to accept?
So moved.
All right. Marissa, please call the roll.
Joe,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Dr. Dave,
Yes.
Molly,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
Ross.
Yes.
All right, it's been accepted. Item M5, discussion or action to purchase a 2023 Heil Durapack 5000 27-yard rear loader mounted on a 2023 Freightliner Econic SD chassis through the Sourcewell contract for $315,000.
Well, since I'm getting so good at this delegating,
Give
I'll
that to
pass
Chad.
this along to Jeff
Or
or Chad.
Jeff,
I'll start, Jeff, my backup.
all right.
Yes, the memo is in your packet, and we included this in the 2023 budget. It's time to rotate out one of the trucks. The Sourcewell contract, you're familiar, we've discussed buying products off the state contract many times. If you recall, about 3 or 4 years ago, the electric department bought a truck off the federal contract. That's the Sourcewell contract. We've been in contact with them, we have everything in place with them. We would just need a simple motion by council to approve us moving forward with this item, which is in our 23 budget.
How long would it take to get this vehicle?
Now we're gonna go to Jeff.
I've been told chassis are available, that chassis is available, and 90 to 120 days for them to put the back end on it, so
Wow.
might almost make my retirement date.
Will that entice you to stay a little longer?
Nope.
All right.
Now, this Christmas, won't just about mess that up.
Yeah, I'm sure. All right, any other questions or comments? All right, need a motion.
I'll motion.
Second.
Okay, Marissa, please call the roll.
Joe,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Dr. Dave,
Yes.
Molly,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
Ross.
Yes.
All right, that has been approved. Is this one you?
Yep.
You want to read all of them? All right, item M6, discussion or action, PC 23-01, conditional use permit for agricultural use parcels 411-294-210-060, 411-294-210-040, 411-295-790-060, and 411-295-790-020.
Planning Commission met last Tuesday, and we looked at these 4 parcels, and the owner would like to have them, basically, there's basically 2 lots in front of, and you can see them up here on the map. There's 2 lots basically in front of the River City Bowlaway, and then you cross Oakwood Avenue, and then there's 2 lots basically around what is known as a renewed mine. They're obviously in grass on an annual basis. The owner would like to turn them into ag use for the sole purpose of alfalfa. The crops will not rotate, so there'll be alfalfa fields. This passed Planning Commission 3-0. The only question that was asked during Planning Commission was what about potential drift of insecticides, pesticides, those kinds of things. And a lot of the, once you get a good stand of alfalfa established, it does not need a lot of those kinds of things, number one. Number two, nobody from the surrounding area came, so there's not that big of a concern about it. And number three, farmers are not in the habit of spraying somebody else's ground. A, you lose the money and it makes your neighbors mad. So they like doing those kinds of things. So again, this passed 3-0, and I suggest council approve it as well. Recommend, not suggest, recommend.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions or comments?
I have a comment.
Yes, sir.
I have serious doubts about whether this is good. You're establishing a very large feeding ground for the local deer. And we have people in the area that are deliberately feeding deer anyhow. And we don't need this added in.
Well, it's already grass, Ken, so if they're gonna eat, they're not gonna change any more from grass to alfalfa.
One thing it will be good for, there's been a lot of problem with declining bee populations and other insects that pollinate, and having another source like this will help support that.
Just one question. I'm not against this at all, but would it be any problem down the road as far as economic development if some organization wanted to come in and use any of this land for economic development
You know,
purposes?
one of the purposes of putting in alfalfa is you don't have to wait for the crop to ripen. If you wanna plow it up 2 days before it's harvested and put in something, you can do that. Versus a corn crop, that's a whole lot more expensive to put in, and you wait till October for it to come out. So that's not gonna establish it, and that's also up to the landowner if they wanna do that deal or not. But
And it would
that's-
just involve changing the zoning type of deal?
No, it's just a permissible use.
Permissible, okay, so it's not a zoning change, okay, thank you.
I think hay, they harvest, what, 3-4 times a year?
Alfalfa's usually, it's solid
Alfalfa.
2, maybe 3,
Yeah.
was the number that was set at the meeting. That would do it. Yep.
So you can do it in between.
Yep.
Is this different than past requests to do agriculture within the limits? That we would be opening the door to other areas maybe that?
Not that I'm aware of. Because there are other areas already in town that are used for agriculture with crops that rotate. Obviously, this one's not that. It's just gonna stay alfalfa the whole time.
Billy, have any insight, especially with the question that Lori just asked?
It's already a permitted use, it's not, there's nothing, the city council has already determined that this is something that can't happen on this property, so unless the council wants to change its mind, I don't know where to go with that one exactly.
questions, comments? Okay, Marissa, I'm sorry, we need a motion.
I'll motion.
Second.
Okay, Marissa, please call the roll.
Joe?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Ken?
No.
Dr. Dave?
Yes.
Molly? Yes. Lori?
No.
Ross?
No.
All right, that was 4-3 in favor. All right, moving on to item M7, discussion or action, approval of plans and specifications for the Meekison Street sanitary sewer improvements.
Chad, you like to handle this one?
If you recall, we've budgeted this project for a couple of years now. I included a memo in the packet. We originally applied for a grant from the Ohio Public Works Commission for $325,000. That was granted in December of '21. We were planning to bid the project last spring. I was made aware of another funding source. That second funding source was through the CDBG program. We applied for that grant, and we were given notice this past December, December 22, that we received an additional $300,000 grant from them. We were hoping to bring this to council a few weeks ago. We were notified that we had to wait until we acquired state approval to bid the project. We received that last week. So because of the CDBG component of this project will actually get bid through the Henry County Commissioners. However, before I take it to the commissioners to bid the project, I always bring these projects to council for approval. This project will consist of installing a new sanitary sewer on Meekison Street from Apian to 3rd Street. The intention of this project is the sewer in that area of town currently flows through a 30-inch brick arch sewer over 100 years old that goes under the former Brothers grocery store. This will essentially abandon most of that sewer, and instead of having a large capacity sewer under a privately owned building, we will have the sewer in a public right of way. Also, as part of the project, when we're finished, we will pave Meekison Street. So with your approval, we'll get this project to the commissioners and get this out to bid in the next week or so.
Thank you. Have any questions or comments? All right, need a motion to approve.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, Marissa, please call the roll. Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
Dr. Dave?
Yes.
Molly? Yes. Lori?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes.
Okay, that has been approved. Item M9, discussion or action to approve the fire department to apply for the Ohio Fire Marshal's Equipment Grant. Assistant Chief Fry.
I think you skipped one.
Oh, did I skip one? Just trying to hurry.
Thank you. This is just a Ohio Fire Marshal's equipment grant we apply for usually every year. Just requesting that we're able to apply for it this year, so they're in the know. This year, we're going to apply the same as we did last year, which is for a prevention simulator, extinguisher simulator for the community. Our current one is not working correctly, so we needed to get a new one. We don't usually rank the highest priority on this grant, so hopefully we get funded for it, but our budget exceeds a lot of the smaller departments that do get funded on this.
Thank you, appreciate that. The motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Third.
Okay, Marissa, please call the roll.
Joe?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
Dr. Dave?
Yes.
Molly? Yes. Lori?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes.
All right, it's been approved. Item M8, discussion or action to approve the Department of Public Works to apply for the Public Water Systems Equipment Grant through the Ohio Environmental Protection Agency.
And this is
So seeking $10,000 for various leak and flow meter equipment, leak testing and flow meter equipment. There's 4 different items that they're looking at, and they just ask for council's approval to move forward with applying for this grant.
Thank you, Andy. Any other questions or comments regarding this? We need a motion to approve.
A motion.
Second.
Okay, Marissa, please call the roll. Yes.
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 All right, that's been approved. All right, let's go around the table here. It's like Brian's first there. You ready, Brian? No. Kevin?
I just want to just bring out, I just think we should start some initial discussions that we may have to start looking at other revenue sources. And it doesn't need to be eminent, but when we had, in the last month, there was, schools have to do a 5-year forecast, and there was 2 schools that I read in the paper that said in year 5 they were running a deficit. I was looking at some of our revenues coming in, and I saw that in 2009 was the last time that we raised our income tax from 1 to 1.3%. And we have no voted real estate millage that goes to the general fund or operations and or capital. And the reason I bring this up is because we've been very fortunate that we haven't had to go to the voters to maintain our operations. However, going back to this last budgeting cycle and the budgeting cycle before that, we've seen it's more expensive to run safety services, also more expensive to do capital improvements to our city. So again, this is not an urgent matter to us, but with, you see that the school is going to put on an operating levy. The library is going to put on an operating levy. I would say that we are not too far off within the next year that we should consider some type of levy or raise in our income tax. And I just want to throw that out there, that we are not immune to increases in items, just like the school has increases, the library has increased, the county has increases. So let me start banging the drum slowly that this may have to take place within the next year. I got more numbers and I can go on further, but I just want to throw that out there, that nothing for May on the ballot, but possibly November or next year sometime. That seriously needs to be looked at. So, okay,
Thank you.
that's all I have.
All right. Hey, Molly?
Mr. Mayor, nice job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, that's it.
Okay,
Oh.
Lori?
And congrats, Andy. So.
Lori?
Welcome officially. And it's nice, kind of like threw me off when I walked in and Jeff was over there. Don't know what I was expecting, but, and very nice job as usual, Mayor. Thank you. That's all from me.
Ross?
It's good to say it. Great job, Jason.
Thank you.
Nice way to go out.
Thank you.
Andy, welcome. I think we really kind of understated how smooth of a transition it was with Chad at the reins last council meeting, but just had time to reflect on it and really just thank you so much for the work you put in. And Kevin as well, Billy, I know you stepped up too, so thanks all around, but Chad, very, very good. Thank you so much. That's all I have.
Thank you. All right, we'll ditto all of that and move on to the mayor.
I mentioned it in my State of the City about as we do reconstruction on the wastewater treatment plant, to name the lab after Kent. I wasn't joking. I thought that was kind of a serious thing. So we can, at the appropriate time, give that to the right committee and make sure we can do that the right way. Also, be remiss if we didn't talk about Betty Ward and her long time of service, and appreciate everything that she's done. Hopefully you all had a chance to come by on Friday night. When I pulled up, it was like the parking lot was as full as it is on a pancake breakfast Sunday. So It was a really good time. I think everybody did a really good job putting that together, so everybody was involved with that on the back wall. Thank you very much. So, also do something for Betty at some point. I know she has a key. They were trying to figure out what door it actually unlocks, but that's something Betty and I can figure out, so. That's all I had. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Dan?
Also, welcome officially, Mr. Small. We're glad to have you on board. And thanks to you too, Chad, for everything you did over the last 3 months. One other item, Safety and Human Resources Committee will meet next Monday at 7:30. We do have a couple items that was brought up during the budget process that we will discuss at that meeting.
Okay, thank you. Ken?
I'll repeat what Dan just said,
All right,
but I won't say it.
okay. All right, Dave?
I have to agree with what a lot of you guys said. Welcome, Andy. Glad you're on board, and I think the mayor did a great job. I'd also like to say thank you to Chief Mack. I think he did an excellent job explaining the radio. Maybe a little more in depth than I even wanted to know, but we know the history. And I think he did a great job. And also the fire department, I want to thank the fire department. I think you've done a fantastic job too. That's it.
Thank you. Billy?
Welcome to Andy, and nothing else from me.
Okay. Andy?
I just want to thank Chad. He was a great help to me this past week of getting up to speed, as well as the department heads. They were all very willing to have me come out and introduce their troops to me, and it was a good first week in getting to know people and starting to establish those relationships. But Chad has been real good about helping me get up to speed on things, and it's nice to have that resource. So, I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right.
Other than that, I will ask for an executive session for compensation of personnel and also pending litigation.
All right. Okay, could I have a motion to go into executive session for pending or imminent litigation and personnel, compensation of personnel?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Marissa, please call the roll. Yes.
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 We're inviting,
February 25th.
all right, no action taken there. However, I'd like to, I'll entertain a motion to support the Napoleon area schools in potential litigation and to work with the school going forward in pursuit of their contract enforcement against CCHC, and further direct the law director to coordinate the city's cooperation and city manager with the school on this matter.
Make the motion.
Second.
And Marissa, please call the roll.
Joe,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Dr. Dave,
Yes.
Molly,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
Ross.
Yes.
All right. And then could I have a motion to come out of executive session for compensation of personnel?
A motion?
Second.
Okay, Marissa, please call the roll.
Joe,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Dr. Dave,
Yes.
Molly,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
Ross.
Yes.
Okay, no action taken there. Item N, approve payment of bills and financial reports. In the absence of any objections or corrections, the payment of bills and financial reports shall stand approved. Hearing none, they're approved. We have a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Marissa, please call the roll.
Joe,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Dr. Dave,
Yes.
Molly,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
Ross.
Yes.